Thank you for coming. Thank you for attending our session on the Internet of Things, very sexy topic that we're going to talk about today. And to do so, we have entrepreneurs from Ninja Blocks. This is Daniel Freidman and Steven van Wei from Karma. So these are two people who are working in this space. And I thought we would just get started, since we only have a few minutes, for each of you to tell us what is your position within this space, and also what is your kind of overall vision for this space. So we'll start with you.
Sure. So our view is that the idea of the Internet of Things is that all of these devices that you can buy now can be connected and addressable via the internet. We're very much, as Ninja Blocks, concerned with the smart home, or making all of these devices work for you in intelligent ways, which is really the promise of the Internet of Things, is that devices can speak to one another and do things a bit more intelligently than they used to otherwise or beforehand. So what we do in our view is that all of these devices are coming. However, most of them that you can buy at Amazon or Best Buy or Home Depot now in the consumer space, they all require a smartphone to operate. And that's great. For example, if you're in bed, a bit lazy, don't want to control your home, or you're on the couch. But when you're trying to make dinner or pack lunches or head out late in the morning, it really sucks having a phone to be able to control all of these devices. So that's what we're trying to really address.
Yeah, so I'm one of those who controls my crock pot with the smartphone. And a lot of times I put the dinner in the crock pot, and then I'm like, where the heck is the smartphone? Because I want to just push the buttons, but then when I'm out, I want the so there's this sort of a communication problem. But this is a problem we've seen over many decades in technology. There's always this sort of difference in protocol, and then there's someone who comes along and solves it, right? Is that sort of your vision?
Oh, completely. I mean, we're taking a very pragmatic approach, which is that we release a lot of open source code to people, and we build connectors for all of these different protocols, so that, we're not trying to say, here is a standard. We're just trying to make something useful that everyone can use. So.
Right. Okay, let's move along to Steven. Tell us about your product and where you stand in this space.
Yeah, I'm the CEO of Karma, and we deliver one thing that people really like to use, that's Wi-Fi. Our small little Wi-Fi app gets connectivity to all your Wi-Fi enabled devices whenever you need it, without all the bigger carriers or unreliable Starbucks Wi-Fi that everyone is well aware of. And for me, the Internet of Things is really a solution to get all your, let's call them dumb devices, like your coffee maker or your thermostat, get them connected to the Internet, and in a way make these devices smart again. One of the most interesting things that I came across is a coffee maker that makes use of social profiles, that makes use of barista recipes to create your perfect coffee. To make sure that whenever you wake up, they know, like, this guy wants an Americano. In the afternoon, he likes a chai latte. And I think connectivity is one of those things that sometimes we take for granted. They are still controlled by a few bigger companies in the US. And it's our mission with Karma to make connectivity available to anyone, everywhere, without the restrictions that the bigger guys are putting down to those Wi-Fi connections.
But what are those restrictions? Because a lot of times when there's a nascent space, the problem is that the solution providers are not communicating. Yeah. So what are the barriers there to making sure that those providers are communicating?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we try to do is make sure that we don't tie you down. So we believe that connectivity should be available and should travel with you, and should be available across all your devices. So carriers tend to make their money when you sign on a dotted line, 2-year contract, and you're stuck. Buy a new device, buy a new subscription. So by turning that upside down, I think we make room for billions and billions of devices to get Wi-Fi connectivity or to get internet connectivity, and that's really a solution.
Right. Okay, I want to ask Daniel, how do you envision sort of the Internet of Things as it relates to the American lifestyle? So I was saying to my husband the other day, I put on our alarm system, like boop, 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 and then I left, and we got in the car, and I said, can you turn off the Nest? And I said, in the perfect world, when I put in that key code, my Nest would turn off, right? Are you working on that? Can you solve that for me?
Yeah, well, that's definitely where our thinking is trying to think of the home as, giving the home as an identity, a personality that's actually something that works for you, as the home that actually responds to and is aware of what's going on. So, I guess in our perfect vision of the smart home, you as a person in your home, you just do what you want to do. You go and you watch TV and you sit there, and the home just adapts and responds to your needs. So if it's dark, you probably need to see, so the light should just be on. If it's cold, the Nest should be on to warm you up, and it should be aware of who's at home, what rooms are they in, so they're saving power, they're not wasting electricity by having lights on in rooms they're not in, and really having like an adaptive home. So in that kind of vision for us, that view of, you just walking out the home, for us, the door would just lock and the alarm would go on because, all of the phones, and it recognizes that all the people are out of it. So it just locks, it puts the alarm off, it turns off this heater, it turns off all the lights. That's our perfect home. Now, there's a few steps we have to solve to be able to get to that kind of vision, but that's where we'd like to take the smart home.
And what are those steps? What's in the way?
I think a lot of it is just that, human beings are they're very unpredictable. And so it's, where, a lot of people in this, particularly the automation space, they view it at a very sort of rules-based approach. So if the phone leaves, then turn on the light, turn off the lights and turn off turn on the heating and etc. For us, we try and take a far more sort of like probabilistic, intelligent approach. Which is, you can't apply rules to human beings because they quickly falls apart, or you don't always do the same thing in the same way every single time. So we try and take a far more intelligent approach of looking at the balance of probabilities, what's here and what should be happening, should the light be on. If we're a little bit unsure, then we'll ask the consumer, we'll ask the user via their phone, say, hey, it looks like you've left your lights on and the heater on, would you like to turn them off? And that's kind of that's our interim solution before we can just start turning things on and off. But it really is that, people, they don't do the same things. We are very habitual, but, it's a bit rough around the edges in there as well.
Right. And I noticed you're working with different products as well, instead of building everything from scratch. So what is that like, talking to the different solution providers? Are they speaking completely different languages, or does it seem like something that someone like you can bridge?
So they are speaking very, very different protocols, very different sort of APIs, everything. Each one is unique, and even within one manufacturer, different products will be slightly different as well, so it is a massive headache. The problem is, the idea is that, then let's get together and we'll build a bit of a standard for the Internet of Things. So then you have a bit of a standard consortium build, but then something's not quite right with that, so then another standard forms, and then another standard, and then everyone gets sick of all these different standards, so they start another standard, and that's where we're starting to see ourselves as a bridge between all of these standards. For our side of things, we're not purporting to say, here is how your devices should speak. We're saying, here is a system or solution that will, regardless of what underlying protocol you speak, will just work.
Oh my gosh, that sounds so like such a tough problem to solve. Better you than me. Okay, Steven, can I ask you about security? Because this is something that people get very scared about when they think of, like, oh my gosh, all my appliances will be smarter than me, and I'm going to take it all with me, and people will know that I'm cooking chili for dinner. Like, what are the main concerns when it comes to security for the Internet of Things?
Great question. I think, like Daniel just described, standards are incredibly important. We know Wi-Fi as a standard, and I think for the Internet of Things, there will be a standard at some point. The Internet of Things is about making things easier, and if things get really easy, people tend to trust how it works. Privacy is a major concern, and I think what Ninja is doing, what we're doing, is putting the customer in control. So if you go out, you should be able to restrict the company of what information we're getting. So as long as you're in control, I think security shouldn't be a big issue. In a way that we use our mobile phones to communicate everything, we tend to trust those devices. I'm not so afraid that the Internet of Things will make these scary robots that will take over the world, right? It should be about making your life easier. And as long as I think guys like me and Daniel and you use our technology to make your life easier, security will just come with the product.
But it's hard to imagine what is a compromise of security, like we saw with the NSA scandal, until it happens. And so then you think like, oh, I do care that the government knows how much I'm heating my house or something like that, right? So are these concerns in the forefront of developers' minds, or will we just react to that when it becomes a problem?
Well, I think I speak for both of us. Security and privacy are super important. I think with younger developers, with younger companies, privacy is maybe one of the most important things that we're building. Even more important than putting our product to market, it needs to be secure. So with more developers like us, making sure that privacy is something that is on top of every list that we have, and maybe Daniel can talk about it as well, that's what will make things more secure, and we'll also make sure that things are anonymous. We don't have to know that coffee maker. We don't have to know that Natali is cooking chili, right? It could be a coffee maker. It could be a crock pot.
Right.
I think, yeah, just to echo, Steven said, security and privacy are fundamental to the way we do things, because, I mean, that is where the trust lies, and if we lose that, then we lose our entire business. It is so important for us, and on the devices we build, we make sure that we can continuously roll out security updates as they get found, and make sure that it is industry standard security and encryption. On the privacy side of things, we try and separate out, like Steven said, who you are from what's going on, and really try and keep those things separate, so that it's really almost as impossible as it can be for a non-authorized person to make inferences about your home as a whole. And that's really sort of where we're trying to set the focus, is just making it almost impossible for anybody to do that, or as possible as it humanly can be, to leak any information about you.
Now, when it comes to these kind of solutions, I always feel like it's easy for me to explain why I want a drop cam on my kids, or why I want an August lock on my door. But my mother or my mother-in-law, it's a harder sell. So maybe it's a very early adopter kind of thing, the Internet of Things. How do you convince consumers that this is a super awesome thing?
I think the only way it's really going to happen is if, products get built that early adopters buy and use, and it honestly makes their lives easier. And I think what we see from a lot of devices is they're more toys than tools. And I think it's really never going to hit the true mass consumer, and not easily explainable and not adoptable by the mass market until they're actually tools that make your life easier. And I think that's only going to happen. That'll take time. People will figure it out. Early adopters will adopt these, and just like smartphones to begin with, the early adopters, they get their hands on it, and then your early majority has a look at it and sees, oh, I see all the benefit that these very forgiving people who've bought this technology have. I would like that too. So I think we're getting there. We're getting to that point very soon.
But with smartphones, we could sort of start fresh. There was no old infrastructure we had to battle. Whereas with the home, with your home heating system and your door and your security, you're up against such an uphill battle with very old infrastructure. Is that something that's hard for either of you?
Well, I think let's not forget that 10, 15 years ago, we had a landline phone, right? And
a landline phone? Yeah.
And that got replaced by the mobile phone. My generation, I never had a landline phone. So I think the same thing will happen with your keys. Like what happens if your August lock just opens when you arrive? Right. So again, it's really about simplifying your life. And when we think that our life gets better, we'll talk about it to our parents, to our family, to our uncles and aunts. And I think that will be the ripple effect.
And also, I think a lot of these new appliances, new devices in the home, the new ones are just far more energy conscious. New LED lights use a tiny fraction of the power that incandescents use. All of these appliances. So I think, and for the Nest, for example, they're a great example of like saving money and saving energy by making it more intelligent. So I think, energy conservation is a valid reason to start sort of be replacing these devices. But I think it's something that'll take a bit of time. Appliances now, there's no major white goods manufacturer that doesn't have a connected devices product line or hasn't announced one. And as people replace these devices, as people replace their light bulbs and their smart devices, everything will be smart. I think that's the world we're going into. It's just it will take a bit longer to as things break down and new things are purchased.
Yeah, and do you think the products themselves will become cheaper as people, because right now you have to sort of invest almost $300 in a Nest, but then you'll save a lot. If you do that, it's still a hard sell, right?
I think people are being far more design conscious nowadays in their technology choices, and I think that's a good reason why Nest sort of really, I think, is come the closest or has cracked the mass market, because it's such a fantastically great product, well-designed product out of the box. So I think that'll inform sort of like the buy decisions for a lot of people. I think a lot will get cheaper. The commoditized stuff, I think light bulbs will be very, very cheap, like smart light bulbs. I think now GE are selling $15 smart light bulbs at Home Depot. So the price is dropping very much on that. I think anything like any device that a human being interacts with, the design is really important. But for a light bulb, it has to have great light, but you don't really see it. So.
Okay, Steven.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I think when we near mass production and we near mass adoption, things get cheaper. I think that happened in every industry, that happens with every technology, and we will see that happen. And I think it goes for the Nest and the August, and then for our device as well. It needs to be cheaper, but with more people buying it, things will get cheaper.
Okay. All right, so we don't have very much more time. I would like to end by asking you each, what is the one thing that you want automated that is currently not automated? It could be I don't know, personal hair plucker or whatever, just go out there. And then the second question, where do you see this space in 5 or 10 years?
I'll start off with an obvious. I don't have a driver's license, so I'd love to see driverless cars. I would love to see that being fully automated. I think that's... Thank you. I think that's a great thing. And to me, and I think we repeat it over and over again, but simplicity. So if the Internet of Things could make our lives better, more efficient, and in a way cheaper by saving, that's the best outcome.
Okay, great.
Mine is not as cool as driverless cars. Good answer. I think for me, light switch. I have a personal tirade against light switch. I think it's 2014. Why are we constantly pushing a button on the side of the room when we need to see? When it's very obvious it's nighttime. So I'd like just lights to be on if we need to see and off if no one's in the room.
Yeah.
So that's something personally for me that I think would be great.
All right. I want to preheat my oven, and I don't want it to be an Android device. I want it to talk to all appliances. I don't want to wait for that crap anymore. I wanted to key it in, it knows. That's what I want, right? Why is that so hard? All right, so send in any kind of weird thing that you got. It could be the personal hair plucker. We want to hear it. There's a hashtag at getgeeked. I will follow that, or if you'd like to send it to me, I'm at Natali Morris on Twitter. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Thank you so much for attending our panel on the Internet of Things, and let the innovation continue. Thank you so much for talking to me.
Thank you very much, Natali.
Okay.
Thank you.